Well, thanks. I've got 35 minutes to talk about 1,800-kilometer long journey, which took me like 70 days. And I know that it's impossible to kind of bring everything in and try to put all of my observations together in such a short time, but I'll try. And I'll also preface this with acknowledging that all of you who are listening are much more intelligent than me. I, on the other hand, only walk and write and take pictures. So I apologize in advance if the talk gets boring. All right, so I'll just share my screen first. And the presentation, the pictures have not a lot to do with the talk. It's just there so that you don't have to watch my face all the time. So yeah, so here's the journey to the east. So I was in England when I was going through like activism routes, and I was photographing for a couple of newspapers and a couple of magazines, and we would be in the 10 Downing Street, and we would be camping outside and protesting against the government and all that sort of stuff. And I came to realize during that time that everyone who was out there was there so that they felt like a sense of community. They felt like a sense of belonging there. And it didn't make a lot of change in the world. And I came to this weird conclusion that if I want to really experience what's going on in the world, then I should actually go out and see what's happening in the world. And obviously, India had fascinated me for the longest time because I grew up in India, and living outside didn't change anything. Didn't change the narrative of what India was like, although there were lots of things happening in India politically, socially, everything was changing. And suddenly I felt like there was something that I can actually work on. There were farmer protests happening in India where the government had come up with farm laws which had dramatic impact on a lot of lives of the farmers. And so I thought this is the right thing to do. And when I lived in India, in Maharashtra, there were lots and lots of suicides in my state. So every year we have thousands of suicides happening in Maharashtra itself, and most of it is due to droughts and water shortages, and the planning which the government does isn't correct. And so all of these things were coming together and forming these problems in the home state. And so I decided, after finishing my studies and after staying there for a year or so, to come back and do a long project on this. And the idea of walking just popped up because I'd seen a couple of people do it, but to do it like this was a big task. So what I did was I designed a trolley. So basically, I'll start with where I started from. So I started from this place on the western shore of Maharashtra in India, and I ended up in this place on the eastern shore. So I went from this place to this place, right? So it was all the way from the central parts of India, and I crossed through 4 different states. Um, uh, Illegally through 2 states and legally through 1 state. And yeah, so this is the trolley that I created, this one, with the help of a couple of my father's friends. They worked in a nearby factory, and they manufactured industry equipments, so heavy industry equipments. And he just listened to what I had to do and the story, and he accepted the idea. And they basically invented this entire trolley, brand new for me. And this was the thing that I was carrying all the way along to the end of the road. And I look back at this and I completely understand that it's not me that was the attraction, because lots of people were actually coming along and saying hi, and everyone wanted to take a picture and stuff like that. And I completely understand that I was not the attraction. It was this trolley. Everyone wanted to take a picture of this trolley, and some people even were taking the trolley along with them. Right. So why did I decide to walk? There are lots of people doing something like this in many different ways. The problem with going with a mode of transportation, like I don't know, a bike or a car or something like that, and I see a lot of people doing that. The problem with that is, in India at least, there is a problem of hierarchy. When you go into a place, however small or however big it is, you face instantly, when you go there, you face this dilemma that when you enter that place, everyone judges you in a particular way depending on what kind of clothes you're wearing, what kind of transportation you're with. And what that makes is, that makes you an outsider. You cannot literally enter the village and talk to people as normal people, like a normal person. And what that makes is, it makes research very difficult, because you cannot really have an honest discussion with people, because people lie. um, there's Anukriti here, and a couple of other people. I don't know who is Indian here, but there is a problem in India that whenever there are guests in our house, we actually just magnify things. We clean the house, we paint it, we make everything much more suitable to the guest. Like, it will look much more better for the guest. And that's the same thing when it comes to attitude towards someone foreign who is coming into their land. And I didn't want to have that kind of a connection with people. And going into those areas, walking instantly makes a connect with them. Everyone calls you home, they sit you down, you have discussions, you start talking with each other. So all that sort of stuff starts happening, and that's the best thing that I think I got through the walk, that I got to get connected with a lot of people. So the walk went through, and I'm sorry, because I'm using like a lot of colorful like colors in the presentation, because the kind of world that we are living in is quite bleak right now. So there's some colors for you. uh, the walk itself went through like 4 different phases, right? So the first one was excitement. So I was excited about just going out and living in the wild and living in the nature. Everyone wanted to help me out. I saw like the good side of humanity for the first couple of 100, at least 100 200 kilometers of the walk. But as I pondered upon that entire distance, I realized that all that place that I was walking from was abundant, was abundant in food, was abundant in water, was abundant in all the necessary things that you need to live. And that's what made things exciting, because everyone around was in abundance, and everyone had everything that they needed. So there weren't a lot of problems. So I felt like the entire walk is going to be like this. Everything will be exciting, and everyone will call me in, and I'll be living in temples, mosques, gurudwaras, wherever people invite me, or even in their houses. And that's how it's going to be. So I was in awe at just witnessing everything as an observer. It's good to just keep all your labels of whoever you are aside, and just be there as a person, and hear the stories, whatever they're trying to tell you. So that's where the first kind of 100, 200 kilometers went. And I'm not showing a lot of pictures, but most of the time, this is the kind of road that I was walking on. So it wasn't all good. Even though it was tar roads, but most of the time it was just potholes everywhere and muddy. In some places it was just mud roads. There was nothing happening in those places, right? So this is how I walked. So I'm just moving past all the funny pictures, but I met a lot of people who were like me, who were going on different kinds of spiritual journeys, um, which is like something someone does in the West, like the Camino de Santiago, kind of a trail that someone would do. We have a thing in India called Wari, and I felt like those peoples were the one. Those people were the one who were outside the society, the kind of the rigid society that I was living in, or we are living in. And I started questioning a few things. I started going through different problems of my own. Throughout this time, I was every village that I stayed in, I would meet the head of the village, and I would bring everyone in. I would bring everyone together to have a discussion, and we would discuss about a number of things, about politics, how's the farm life, what's going on in the farm, and what's the drought situation like, were there any suicides or anything. Like, I was just getting all the stories from them. That I was actually noting down and taking data into consideration and all of that. But the stories became more interesting, so I went further with the stories, right? There were a couple of places where I met people who would give me such an honest picture of what's going on in their place, in their village, or in the city, that it could shake anyone who is actually living in a city, or is thinking of going for a research over there. Because the reality of the world that we are living in is so difficult to even comprehend. There's I'll start with the next thing, which is confusion. So next thing was confusion, right? Like, what's happening? Like, why is everything so difficult to actually look at? Even though everything is out there, even though everything is as I wished it to be, some things have started to change, and that change was because I had entered a kind of a drought-ridden area. So it was the start of the drought-ridden area, right? So there was a lack of education in most of these areas. The schools that were there had no teachers in them. Like, the teachers would only come maybe once in 2 weeks or once in 3 weeks, and all the students who were living in that village would have to go to that school, which is a government school, or else they would have to walk, because there were no other modes of transportation at that moment of time, for like 15-20 kilometers to go to the nearest school, which is very hard to do. So they end up just living in that village, working on the farms with their mom and dad. And there's no there's no laptops or any sort of modern facilities that you get in any city that we can think of. There were no hospitals. So most of the places, I'll come to that later, but there were no hospitals in most of the villages that I was going through. So if someone were to have like a sudden heart attack, you'd have to go maybe like to the nearest city, which would be 150-200 kilometers away, which means that the person would normally die. And most of the cases like that just go unreported, and I've seen n number of cases which is when I literally stopped taking any sort of data into consideration, right? And I went with the flow. I went with the people, whatever they were trying to come up with, and whatever stories they had. So I started listening to their stories. So there's a lot of low tolerance, like physical, mental low tolerance in the people. And I kept questioning myself, why is this happening? Like, people were living a good life in the past, and I had seen that growing up in India, and something must have changed. I don't know what it was. And suddenly it was there, like in front of me, that people had disconnected themselves from nature. Like, the kind of lives that they were living before were close to the livestock, close to the farm, close to, all the things that they needed. And suddenly you had like a dependence on the government for most of the things, because the government in India started giving off free food for most of the farming population at that point. And people started losing all the abilities that they had in the past. So they knew how to cultivate their own food. They knew how to do everything. They were living their own lives for the longest period of time, and suddenly we have the shift from living a natural life to living a life with technology. And this is something that I observe, I can see happening, which is different from what has happened in, let's say, England, because I've lived there. Is that there is a gradual transformation that happened when technology came into place, and people would go from simple modes of technology to a better and a better and a better, till you come to a point where you are now, using Python. But here you have a completely illiterate society when it comes to technology, who has grown from nothing to WhatsApp. And there is no in between. They have no idea what has happened in between, because most of the villages where I went through had no telephone in most of the villages, because they never had cell phone towers. And all of this sounds so weird, that how would this be the case? And I felt the same thing, but this is what I have come up with. Anyway, so when it comes to farming, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to farming. They have gone from using seeds which were harvested and kept for the year and harvested the next year, to GMO crops, where all the I forget the name of that American company, which was taken to court a couple of years back. Anyway, Monsanto started distributing a lot of seeds to all these farmers in all these areas through the government, through like the intervention of the government. And what it made was it changed the way people look at farming, because um, I think someone's mic is on. Anyway, it changed the way people look at farming, because the GMO crops, what they did was it made farming difficult for the people who knew only one way of farming, which was to do it sustainably, which was to use the same crop the next year. And the fascinating thing, which I found when I met with a lot of farmers who were going through this, was that in a lot of areas where there was excess rainfall or low rainfall, they would have seeds which would actually be harvested in excess rainfall or low rainfall area, and they would use it in different times of the year in different ways. And what happens with the GMO crop, that it's like they cannot do it anymore. Like it's gone. Like it's a gone, it's a forgotten act, and they are dependent on pesticides and all these forms of fertilizers, which is absolutely essential for the crops to grow. So people are going in debt. there are different forms of government help that is coming along, but it's only for the big farmers. It's not for the small farmers. And most of the farming in India is for it's the small farmers who do most of the farming in India, and they are in debt. They are in a cycle of debt. Year after year, they're just living a life where this year you will work your ass off so that you can go on to the next year to pay the debt, so that you can work the same thing next year and the next year and the next year, and it continues. It's never ending cycle. And what happens is this makes their life so difficult that they leave their kids to the bigger cities. And that's where the problem comes with the culture. They forget their culture, and they're going into a completely different world. All right. So there's big landowners. There's lots of superstitions in all these areas where the politician has made an image of himself, which is so large and so out of bound that I found, like, one of the kids in one of the villages that I was going from, he had this idea about this politician, local politician, who was an MLA from that area, that this guy has trunks of gold, which is surrounded by a snake who has hair on his back or something like that. Some weird superstition which makes their life so difficult. And the problem with that is, when everyone in the society thinks the same way and everyone is hypnotized in that sense, there is no way of coming out of it. So that was there. What feeds it is the media narratives, the false media narratives. Wherever you go, like, my story was changing every single day. When I told them that I play ukulele, which is a Spanish sort of an instrument, they play it in Spain a lot. Someone in a newspaper wrote that this guy has lived in Spain and his whole life, and he's worked there, and sort of things that I've never done. So um, the narrative was changing at every point. So why is this happening? Like, I was so confused at all of this. Like, why was all of this happening? And it all comes down to the politics, right? And there's a Canadian professor, Marshall McLuhan, who said this, which is, I quote, politics will eventually be replaced by imagery. The politician will be only too happy to abdicate in favor of his image, because the image will be much more powerful than he could ever be. And that's what's happening, not just in India, but all around the world right now. That is where we are headed. So after confusion and after a couple of pictures came trauma. So what to do? Like, where are we going? So what's going to happen from here onwards? And I came to this point where I thought, what if we are the problem? You know, what if we, the ones living an excessive lifestyle, we, the ones living in the cities, driving cars, consuming goods, all of that, like, what if we are the problem? And then who are we to school them? And then I came across this idea that all the kinds of research and the way we are looking at the society is a very very kind of Western way of looking at the society as a primitive. And I don't think, like, that's the right way to look at it. Like, that's what in my opinion, I came up to that point where I was so distanced from all of this that I could actually just be in the place with the people and just listen to their stories and go on to the next village and listen to their stories, because the problems are so difficult to actually bring together. The suicide issue that I was actually going out for had so many different problems in different villages, right? So I'll tell you a couple of stories, right? So one is about three women who I met in a tent. I had camped that night and I wanted to heat up the food, and it was raining heavily that night. And I decided to just walk to the next tent, which was just next to me. And there were three women inside, and I had like noodles with me, and so she graciously accepted that she'll make Maggie for me, if anyone knows what Maggie is. um, and they actually brought me in and gave me incredible hospitality, which I would never get in a big city if I was just to randomly walk to a person. And I was just sitting there, and I asked them a couple of questions. So what, how's your life, and where do you work, and all that sort of stuff. And there was lots of stories that she could have told me, but the one story that she told me, which stayed with me for a long time, her so the older lady was in her 80s, the middle-aged one was in her 50s, and the younger one was by then 17. And the younger one had got married at I think 13 or 14. And the middle-aged woman, her husband had died a couple of months back, and he had died for 50 rupees, which is 50 cents. Someone from the next village had just come there, and he had a loan of 50 cents, and they were extremely drunk, out of their mind, and they killed him, put him in a drainage pipe, and kept his body rotting there for weeks, and no one knew where he was. And these women had gone to the police stations, and the police stations told them that they were a bunch of animals, and the way they were treated is exactly how they should be treated. And I was confused, but when I listened to the entire story, I realized that this is not just that; it is a caste issue, because these were Adivasi people, who is like a tribal people, who are like the lowest caste. And the policeman looked at them like that, and that is why they never really went out to help them. And these three women were living a life of labor. They had a couple of goats with them, and I think a cow or something like that. And they were somehow managing to live. Another story was from a place called Bhokar, where a guy, there were two families, and I was asked to live in a farmhouse by a professor in Nanded, which is a city in the middle of Maharashtra. And when I was there in Bhokar, the one of the family members from the two families was extremely addicted to this one local drink called shindi, which is made from the trunk of one of the trees, which makes you intoxicated. And what happens is, in these areas, uh, all these alcohol factories are owned by the politicians, or somewhere, someone close to the politicians, right? And um, they have absolute control over all the sort of judicial side, or the law enforcement and everything. So what happens is, they can use them in whatever way they want. And to make people addicted to this stuff, they use different sorts of additives in it. I don't exactly know what it is, but in some places it was poison, in a very like rat poison kind of, in a very low amount. There are lots and lots of killings that happen, like people dying because of this, and the number is quite high when it comes to like yearly how many people die in India because of the substance. This person started just blabbering in the middle of the night, and the entire family just got up, and they knocked on my door, and they asked if this guy can sleep with me, and on the next bed. And I said, yeah, of course, sure, why not? It's the professor's house, and I don't really mind. And this guy was sleeping in a bed next to me, and he kept looking at me I guess 15-20 minutes. And I did not understand what it was, like why he was doing that, or any of that sort of stuff. And when I asked him a question, he said, there are people who are going to come and kill me. There's a small opening in the terrace, in the roof, and someone will come with a knife and kill me. And I thought it was just addiction, but the next day I called a doctor that I knew, and he immediately said that it's not addiction, it's schizophrenia. It has all the symptoms of schizophrenia. So you would imagine that this guy would go to a hospital, right? But that's not the case, because there's no hospital nearby. The nearest hospital would be in the nearest city, which is maybe 100 kilometers away. And even if he wanted to, he cannot go to that hospital, because he's bound to a contract to the farm, and his family, which is his wife and his kids, are living on that farm. So he, even if he wanted to seek medical attention, he cannot go to the city and get himself admitted. um, and I can see all this, pain and rage in the eyes of all these people, because these were not bad people. We are made to believe that all of these people that we are meeting when we are going out to document them or whatever, that we are somehow in a higher position, like we are somehow in a bigger position than them. And I think that's not the case. Like, all of these people are also people like us, who have problems like us. None of us, including all of you and me, are having a smooth life. Every one of us is going through some sort of trauma, some sort of anxiety, stresses, and different kinds of things. The only good thing is we can seek attention whenever we want to, and that comes with a privilege. And that's why when we are going into the field to work on something like this, we should understand that these people are just not privileged enough to have this attention, and that is why they are in this position. There's nothing bad with them. They are not bad people, as the media makes portrays them. So what's the answer to all this? Like, so what's the answer to this one person? If it's looked in a way where a city person is looking down at a rural person, the answer would be that he should seek medical attention, and he should need pills, and he should go into some sort of a place where he can isolate himself with a couple of different people like him. But what's that going to do? It's only going to mint money for the pharma industry. And from what I've seen with a couple of my friends who are into research as well, is that most of the people who are completing their PhDs and trying to look out for work afterwards, have to, for no reason, go into the R&D department of some sort of a pharmaceutical industry, which they know is not ethical, but that's what they're doing. And so they know that this is not the end of the problem. This is not the solution to the problem. There's lots and lots of things that go deep down, which are at the root of the problem. And as Carl Jung said, man is the problem. Like, we don't understand that we ourselves are the issue. And if we don't look at our own problems, we cannot look at other people's problems. So this is what I got through the experience of trauma. Sorry. So I understood that I should be equal to the people that I was interviewing and I was talking with, because there was a lot of darkness within me as well. So there were lots of false suicide stories. In one of the places, the government officer had created this false story to get more money, because there was this guy in a village who died out of natural causes, but the government has a scheme where it gives 1 lakh rupees to the deceased. So to get that money, what the government officer did was he forcibly took the dead person's body to a tree, hanged him on the tree, and took pictures of it and sent it to the local whatever it is. And they got money from it, and he divided that money with the family. So he got some 70% and the family should have got some 30%. So these were the stories that I was coming out with, and these in itself are such horrible stories that no one would ever go on to publish these stories. This is what I got out of it, because whenever I tried to speak about these things with newspapers or media, no one wants this kind of thing. Everyone wants just the kind of the jolly side of the travel, the jolly side of what's going on in the world. So there's lots of story. I'll just skip past a couple of, because this is another guy I met who had like a similar story, who was coming from a city in the south in Hyderabad to going to Delhi, because he was just he had to leave his job because the guy fired him, and he's a carpenter. So he just built his own kind of cycle, and he was going up. So I just thought I should show it, because there are some stories which cannot be shown, that they don't have the kind of right ways to show their stories. Anyway, so so that was the kind of trauma that I faced. And from that point onwards, I sort of felt like I should have gratitude towards all of this. I should be happy for actually experiencing what I'm experiencing. This is not everyone gets a chance to have this kind of a journey. And so what started out as a journey which was to document the farmer suicides turned out that it was a sort of journey into myself. I was only a witness to whatever was happening, and I was going through all of this. And although it was not the end, I came up with a lot of problems, and I came up with a lot of more questions at the end of it. And all of these problems that the people were facing were coming from rapid progress and detachment from what was, detachment from where they were coming from. So it was a complete lack of their environment, lack of habitat that they were living in. The languages were disturbed, the cultures were disturbed. So this was no different to the Australian Aborigines who took up drinking at some point, and everyone blamed them that why are these people just drunkards and going out drinking everywhere they're going. And causing a nuisance to a society. But we forget to realize that they had their own way of life. They had a different way of living, and we are kind of imposing our ways of living onto them, which are so ridiculous, in my opinion, because look where consumerism has brought us today. We who are living in cities, we just don't know where this ends. It keeps going on and on and on, and this is a cycle that just never ending cycle. So these people were actually living with closely to the nature, and they had their roots grounded in nature. So so these were the people who were self-sustained. And now for all these corporations, we are making like greenwashing all of these things into a self-sustainable kind of universe that we are going to live in for the future, when we are coming from that. We are just taking all of the things that the indigenous people have been using, and even we, for the longest period of time, even in the West and the East, have been using these things for the longest period of time. And now it's just being commodified and given back to us into a packaging which is green, just that. There's nothing more than that. So that's what I realized. So what's the answer to all of this? I don't know. That's that's the answer to all of this. There is a lot of things happening in the world, and I don't know what the answer is. There are a lot of problems. There are problems when it comes to having a lack of a spiritual core in our being, where we are not centered anywhere at this point. We cannot be devoted to a god which we cannot see, which is like the internet today. Wherever that is heading today, I don't think we can be just devoted to that. There's another quote by Carl Jung, who says, you can take away man's gods, but only to give him others in return. So that's what we are doing. We are taking away everything that they had, and we are giving them new ones, which are to our benefit, which are produced and developed very intricately by us. Whereas the old gods were just wind and fire and sun and just nature. That was God for most of the people before. So we have taken that from them. And sorry, I'll try to finish this as quickly as I can. And there's a theologian called Thomas Berry who called this thing that we are losing right now as the great conversation. So it's the conversation between us humans and everything else that is around us. And what has happened is that we have started to have conversations only amongst ourselves. And we have stopped listening to what's outside. We have stopped going at the edges of nature and just sitting and listening to the birds singing and the waves crashing on the ocean and the wind blowing and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what's creating all of these problems. There are no songs left in all these cultures. When people used to farm, they used to just sing and they used to be happy that they're making new crop for the next year. So all of that kind of things are gone. And yeah, so that's where we are at. That's where it leaves us. So this is Prakash Amte, by the way. These are a couple of pictures that I took during the walk. It's a completely different part of India, side of India that I never knew growing up. I had no history lessons that I got, which would tell me that this is what it was. It's a very, very different kind of India that I was going through. No one in the cities or no place that I come from lives and wears this kind of stuff on the head and in the noses and all of that kind of stuff. So everything was new for me. So yeah, so when I ended this and when I was writing a book about this, and I was reading all the other writers who have talked about all these issues, maybe 50 or even 100 or even 200 years back in some cases. I looked at myself and thought that all of this work that I was doing is quite futile, it's of no use in a way. So there you go. Thanks for coming to a talk on nihilism. Yeah, so that's where we are. This is the end, and I feel as if we have been given a very short time in our hand, and I feel like it might be up to us to work on these issues in a more holistic way, where we look at all the people that we are observing or documenting in any ways as equals to us. And to work on these issues in a holistic way, we would have to reimagine ourselves in order to reimagine a future for ourselves. So yeah, that's from me. Over to you. Thank you.